My name is Nico Groenendijk. I'm a professor of economics and one of the teachers in the European Public Administration program. I will be presenting this information meeting together with Simone ten Have, who is a first-year student. Let's start with the program and what the program is all about. The starting point for our program is that Europe, the European Union, is facing all kinds of major challenges, and these are challenges that have got to do with innovation, with sustainability and with social inclusion. Let me give you a couple of examples. For instance, when it comes to innovation, what we know is that Europe is lagging behind when it comes to productivity. Lagging behind compared to the United States, but also compared to the emerging economies in Asia, China, India, but also emerging economies in Southern America, like Brazil. So we are not doing that well in an economic sense, and we need to do something about it. We have to increase our productivity by being smarter, by being more innovative. But actually we are also lagging behind when it comes to innovation. For instance, if you look at the number of patents that are granted here in Europe, so inventions that get a patent, which is a quite good measure for the level of innovation, we can see that Europe is also lagging behind. Another example is climate change, which is not typically a European problem, it's a global problem, but of course it has a huge impact on the European Union. Yet another problem is the north-south divide that we can witness in the European Union. Think about the Euro crisis with Greece and Spain and Italy. Aging is also an important problem in the European Union. Almost all member countries have this problem of aging, where a decreasing number of people are still in the working force and have to make sure that there is plenty of money to pay for health services, to pay for pensions. And we have a problem of immigration, sometimes illegal immigration. And actually that's quite interesting, because we also know that because of this problem of aging, we have in the near future a shortage of labor, especially low-cost labor. So these are all examples of things that have got to do with innovation, sustainability, and social inclusion. And very often what happens is that people look at the European Union and they expect the European Union to solve these problems. That makes sense, because a lot of these problems are indeed problems that are not limited to one country. On the other hand, if you look at the European Union, it has problems of its own in terms of legitimacy, in terms of effectiveness. So that's another thing that is worth studying and worth researching. Now, if you look at these kind of problems, then we actually need two types of people. First of all, we need researchers that can do research into these problems, complicated problems, what we call wicked problems, people that work at universities, at think tanks or consultancies. But we also need professionals, people that work in international organizations like the European Union, like the WTO or the United Nations or the OECD, at national level, maybe at regional level, local level, people that may work in the private sector with multinationals, with non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and that deal with these problems, that come up with solutions, with policies, people that design policies and implement them. These are the kind of people that we train in the program. This is what we have in mind when we teach you. We want to deliver, so to speak, researchers and professionals that deal with these kind of problems. If you look at the kind of problems that I just gave some examples of, well, you can first of all see then that they are complicated, and that very often we don't have simple solutions. So we have to think about complicated solutions. Second characteristics is that because things are so complicated, we need to analyze things thoroughly. We have to think thoroughly about the possible solutions that we can bring to the problems. Another thing, I just mentioned that, increasingly international. We are almost always talking about cross-border problems, really international problems. Another thing is that what you can see in terms of solutions, it's not only up to the government anymore to come up with solutions. Increasingly you can see that the government has to work together with companies, with maybe universities, or with civil society organizations in general, in order to come up with problems. So we have a cooperation between the public and the private sector. And then finally, it is important, in our view, that governments manage their own affairs in a decent way. If you look at these characteristics, then they are reflected in our program, the main characteristics of our program. First of all, the program is multidisciplinary. As I just said, no simple solutions. Problems are complicated, policies are complicated, and you cannot say, well, this is an economic problem, or this is a legal problem, or a social problem, or just a political problem. What we can see is that problems are multidisciplinary. So that means that we have to train you in a multidisciplinary way. Another thing is that the program pays a lot of attention to research methods and to policy analysis and policy design. It is a very thorough program in that sense. The program is not just about government. It is about what we call multi-level governance. The fact that problems are increasingly international makes that you have cooperation between all various levels of government. Let's say from the global level to the European level, national level, regional level, local level. And we have this cooperation between the public sector and the private sector. That is what we call multi-level and multi-actor governance. And then finally, the program pays attention to public management, the efficient management of government of its own affairs. So these are the main characteristics of the program. Especially this first thing is very important, this characteristic of multidisciplinarity. And why is that important? Well, it's quite easy to show, for instance, by looking at labor migration. Labor migration is a problem, both within the EU, but also if you look at the EU on a global level. There are a lot of people that come from, for instance, Africa, and that want to go into the European Union because of the very bad conditions they have to live in Africa, and they think that Europe is paradise, so to speak, and that is why they want to come in here. But also within the European Union, we have labor migration, people from, let's say, poorer countries coming to work in the richer, mainly Western countries. We have had quite some flow of workers from countries like Poland and lately from Bulgaria and Romania. And of course, this has got to do with economics. It's about wages and what you can earn. And it is also important in economic terms when you think about the composition of your labor force, for instance, with a view to aging, what I've just mentioned. So it's clearly an economic thing, but it has other aspects as well. Think about the social impacts. Think about the impact that such a flow of workers can have on communities in, for instance, Bulgaria or Romania, or think about what is happening nowadays in Spain, where you have a high level of youth employment and people are simply moving out of that country, young, well-educated, talented people, and they are coming to work here in the Netherlands or in Germany. You can think about the impact that that has in social terms. Also the other way around. A couple of months ago, our Minister of Social Affairs, Lodewijk Asscher, issued what he called a code orange, some sort of a warning sign. He was saying, you know, if you look at the big cities in the Netherlands, you can see that they now have such a big inflow of people from Romania, Bulgaria, in addition to the inflow already of people from Poland, that we are looking at a sort of development towards ghettos, where you have a concentration of people from Eastern European countries in the big cities. And socially, that is unacceptable. So that's also a social aspect of this problem. But of course, there are also legal aspects. I mean, it is simply said in the treaties that we have free movement of workers. So people are allowed to move from one country of the European Union to another. And we shouldn't really make a difference whether they are from the UK or whether they are from Bulgaria or Sweden or from Spain. And then finally, if you want to do something about, let's say, the effects of labor migration, then you have to think about the right level of decision making. That's the political part. This is typically something that you cannot solve anymore on the nation state level. It's something that has to be solved on the EU level. And if you think about global migration, it is probably something that even has to be solved on the global level. So this is just to show that taking into account all these different perspectives from economics, law, political science and sociology is very important.